So, Stuart, it seems like every year audio companies are coming out with a new version of their soundboard.
Yeah, and since we live in an age in a mature market now with cell phones, but we've been conditioned to where we have to buy a new cell phone every 2 years. Somehow,
that's right.
Somehow, digital consoles just kind of like fell into there, where it's like, oh, we've had this console for a few years, we need to upgrade.
Yeah, because it seems like
the latest and greatest.
It seems like before digital consoles came out, people were happy to leave their analog consoles sitting in the church for decades. And I know this because we still walk into churches where we're replacing a board that they bought 30 years ago. They never once thought over those 30 years, oh, I need to upgrade this.
Because all you're trying to do is you're trying to take signals and mix them.
Yeah.
That's really all you're trying to do is mix them.
And it kind of caveats into so what we're talking about is how often do you need to upgrade your board, but also which board to get. And the cell phone analogy carries over perfectly.
Yeah.
iPhone, Android, Google, I don't care.
Yeah.
Get one. They all do the same things. They all have pretty good operating systems. Some have better operating systems, or some you might find easier to use, and that's true on digital consoles.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And some digital console, like some audio companies build better and worse desks. Like I'm not trying to say they're all the same in that. But really, there's a bunch of main players, and they're all building really good gear.
Yeah, so if we generalize a few things, you're in a small to medium church, then you're not doing anything wild.
Yeah.
Or at least you shouldn't be doing anything wild. And you probably don't need more than 32 inputs. Unless, again, you're doing some crazy
stuff.
So,
and a lot of consoles are built around that kind of 32.
Yeah, 32 kind of seems to be the magic number. So, figure out a price point and you buy one and keep it for a while. We don't need to change these out all the time.
And maybe you need a good reason to change it out. Like we work with churches sometimes that are using a console and they're like, hey, we've got this new plan. We've got this new way we're going to do things. Yeah. We need 8 more channels. What do you guys recommend?
Sure.
And my first inclination isn't to come back and be like, well, you need a $20,000 mixing console.
Yeah.
No, let's do some research. What are you going to do with those channels? How are they going to be routed? I remember watching, there's a lot of church podcasts out there, and I remember watching one a few years ago where the host was like talking about Behringer, the X32, M32, which were both great consoles. And he said something like, it's 2022. Why are we still putting M32 consoles in churches? And I remember watching that thinking, what does that have to do with anything? The M32 is a great console.
Great console, easy to use. Volunteers can run it. So that's, there's a lot of questions to be asked, and there's not a good answer, like a good general answer.
Yeah, you need to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, it's a conversation starter. And you have to determine, do you have volunteers? Do you have a trained sound tech? Are you doing a very basic thing? Are you doing something more complicated?
How much programming do you want to do?
Yeah. So that kind of would steer, I think, the direction as to what kind of console you get.
Because one of the things I like about X32, M32, and we're not sponsored by Behringer, but one of the things I like about them is out of the box, they're plug and play. You don't have to do any programming. That's really cool. Some consoles, like even Behringer, they launched the Wing, and the Wing is a really cool console, but out of the box, it's almost worthless. Like you have to
go
set it up.
Yep.
You have to set it to your specific parameters. And if you know what you're doing, that could be great. And if you don't know what you're doing, that could be really, really bad.
Yes.
Allen and Heath is that way too. I know when they did their SQ series, it's all open architecture. Again, to an audio guy, that's awesome. Open architecture. I can put anything anywhere.
All kinds of cool stuff.
But I've walked into churches, I kid you not. I walked into a church one time I had to do a troubleshooting at. It was in Allen and Heath. And I looked at the board and nothing was logical. We talk about industry standard, kick, snare, tom, right? Nothing was logical. I'm staring at it, trying to troubleshoot. And finally I asked the tech guys, like, where's the drums? And he's like, oh, that's on page 6. So I had to page 6? Oh, there's the drums. So sometimes open architecture can be dangerous in the wrong hands. Yep. But as far as the technology, you need to quit buying the lie that they're really advancing that quickly. They're not. Every couple of years, we've seen more advances over a decade than we'd see from year to year.
Yeah.
And that's important. I will say that we are living in the golden age of digital consoles where it used to be you could not get a good usable digital console for under $10,000. And now I can think of 10 great consoles under $5,000. So there's a lot of things to look into there. But if your console is still working, you're not having any major errors with it, it fits your needs, it's easy to use, by all means, just keep using it. Don't feel like you need to upgrade
and invest that money. If you have money to spend, invest it somewhere else.